entered the ship, and many sailors were shouting and running to save it. I thought I might die. I prayed silently, hoping God would protect me. By some miracle, the storm passed after many hours, and the ship survived. That day I learned a lesson. The sea is beautiful, but it can also be very dangerous. Life on land is safe, but life at sea can change in a moment. After that first voyage, I still felt the same strong desire to travel. As
my English channel. Are you learning English? That's awesome. Let's learn English together through some exciting stories. But first, tell me, which country are you watching from? I'd love to know how far this message has reached. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Alright, let's get started.
1. Introduction. My name is Robinson Crusoe. I was born in the city of York, in England, in the year 1632. My family has a comfortable life, and my parents are good, honest people. They always wanted me to live a quiet, safe, and peaceful life. Came stronger. Every time I listened to stories about travelers or sailors, my imagination came alive. I saw myself standing on the deck of a ship, watching the blue water stretch endlessly in every direction. I felt the wind in my face, and I heard the sound of the waves in my mind. I knew very clearly that the life I wanted was a life of adventure. However, my parents did not understand this. They were worried about me. They told me again and again that the sea was dangerous. They said there were storms, accidents, and pirates. They believed that a peaceful life at home was better than a risky life on the water. My father especially tried to guide me toward what he called the middle way, a life that was safe, steady, and full of comfort. But no matter how much they talked to me, my heart did not change. Every day I felt the same strong desire. I knew that if I stayed home, I would always feel unhappy. I would always wonder what was waiting for me beyond the horizon. I would always regret not following my dreams. When I turned 19 years old, I finally made my decision. It was the hardest decision of my life, because I love my parents. I knew they would feel disappointed and sad if I left. But I also knew that I could not ignore the call of the sea any longer. I had to follow my own path. So, one morning, I packed a small bag with a few clothes and some belongings. I left my home quietly, without telling my parents. My heart was beating fast, full of fear and excitement. I walked to the city of Hull, where many ships were preparing for long journeys. When I reached the port, I felt my heart race. There were sailors shouting, ropes moving, and the smell of the sea everywhere. It felt like the world I had been dreaming about for so many years. There, I saw a ship getting ready to sail to London. I knew this was my chance. Without thinking too much, I asked to join the crew. They accepted me, and I stepped onto the ship. At that moment, I felt both scared and alive. I knew that my old life was behind me, and a new life was beginning. I did not know what challenges or dangers were waiting for me. I did not know that my journey would change me forever. But as the ship moved away from the shore, I felt a deep happiness inside. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I wanted to be, on the open sea, following my dream. 2. Early voyages, my first journeys. After I left my home in York, began. I was very young and very eager, but I did not know how dangerous the sea could be. The ship I joined sailed along the coast of England, and I was full of excitement. I watched the sailors work with ropes and sails, and I listened to the captain's instructions carefully. Everything seemed new and wonderful to me, but soon I learned that the sea is not always kind. On one trip, we faced a terrible storm. The sky was dark, the wind was strong, and the waves rose higher and higher. The ship rocked from side to side. I was afraid, very afraid. I had never seen anything like it before. Water entered the ship, and many sailors were shouting and running to save it. I thought I might die. I prayed silently, hoping God would protect me. By some miracle, the storm passed after many hours, and the ship survived. That day I learned a lesson. The sea is beautiful, but it can also be very dangerous. Life on land is safe, but life at sea can change in a moment. After that first voyage, I still felt the same strong desire to travel. As soon as I returned to land, I was already thinking about my next journey. I did not want to stay in England for long. I wanted to see other countries and experience new adventures. Soon, I found another ship, this time heading to Africa. I joined the crew again, feeling both nervous and excited. Our journey took us to the coast of Guinea in West Africa. There, I saw things I had never seen before. Tall palm trees, small villages along the shore, and the warm sun shining over the ocean. We traded goods with the local people. I learned how to buy and sell items, and I also learned to be careful and respectful with others. The local traders were very skilled, and I watched them closely to learn their ways. One of the most important lessons I learned during this time was how to navigate by the stars. At night, when the sky was clear, I looked at the stars and tried to understand their patterns. The sailors showed me how to use the stars to find direction when there were no maps or landmarks. This skill became very important for my later journeys. I practiced every night, and slowly I became more confident. The stars became my guides, and I learned to trust them as I traveled across the ocean. After several months of trading along the coast, I finally earned some money. It was not a lot, but it was enough for a young man like me to feel independent. I had worked hard, faced dangers, and learned new skills. I felt proud of myself. The sea had tested me, but I had survived, and I had grown stronger and wiser. With the money I earned, I decided to try something new. I wanted to live somewhere for a while, to rest and prepare for my next adventure. I chose Brazil. It was a long journey across the Atlantic Ocean, but I was ready. I had learned many things from my early voyages: how to work on a ship, how to navigate by the stars, and how to trade with people from different cultures. I felt confident that I could handle the challenges ahead. When I arrived in Brazil, I was amazed. The land was rich and fertile. There were many rivers, forests, and hills. People worked hard on farms and in towns, and the cities were full of life. I decided to stay for a while and try to settle. I worked in trade and learned more about farming and the local culture. I also met new friends who taught me about their lives and experiences. During my time in Brazil, I earned enough money to live comfortably. I learned that life on land can be peaceful and rewarding, but my heart still belonged to the sea. I missed the waves, the wind, and the feeling of adventure. Even though I had a safe place to live, I could not ignore the call of the ocean. I knew that my journey was not over. There were more lands to see, more seas to sail, and more challenges to face. Looking back on my early voyages, I realized how much I had changed. I was no longer the young boy who left York without knowing what awaited him. I had faced storms, learned new skills, traded with strangers, and survived difficult situations. I had discovered the strength inside me and the courage to follow my dreams. Every wave I sailed over, every star I watched at night, and every trade I made taught me something new about life. Even in Brazil, I felt ready for more adventures. I wanted to see the world beyond the horizon, to explore lands I had never visited, and to face challenges I had never imagined. These first trips shaped the man I would become. I learned that adventure is not easy, and the sea is never completely safe. But I also learned that life is full of possibilities for those who are brave enough to follow their dreams. I had chosen the path of adventure, and there was no turning back. 3. A new life in Brazil. My new life and brief happiness. After some time in Brazil, I began to build a life for myself. With the money I had earned from my first voyages along the coast of Guinea, I decided to invest in land. I bought a small piece of land not far from the city. It was a good place, with fertile soil and a warm climate. I decided to plant sugarcane because it was valuable and in high demand. Every day, I worked hard on the land. I learned how to plant the cane, how to water it, and how to care for it. Slowly, my little plantation grew, and I felt proud of my work. For the first time in my life, I had a home, a piece of land that I could call my own. Life in Brazil began to feel comfortable and peaceful. I met many people in the town, and some of them became good friends. I enjoyed the simple life of working on the land, trading goods, and watching the sugarcane grow. But the greatest happiness in my life came when I met Isabella. She was kind, gentle, and full of life. From the moment I saw her, I knew she was the woman I wanted to spend my life with. Over time, we fell deeply in love. She shared my dreams and my hopes, and she became my companion in both work and life. After some months of courtship, Isabella and I were married. Our wedding was small but full of joy. Friends and neighbors came to celebrate with us. For 4 years, we lived happily together. Every day felt like a blessing. We worked side by side on our plantation, and we dreamed of a future together. The land produced good crops, and our small house was filled with laughter and love. I felt content, and for the first time in my life, I believed that I could have a peaceful, happy life. But life is never completely without challenges. One day, some friends of mine visited me. They were sailors and merchants, experienced in trade and travel. They told me about a special opportunity, a final voyage that could double all the money I had earned so far. They said it was dangerous, but very profitable. My friends spoke with excitement, and I could feel their energy. They assured me that everything would be fine, and that this voyage would be my last great adventure before settling down completely. At first, I hesitated. I thought about Isabella. I thought about the life we had built together, the plantation, and our home. I thought about our happiness over the last 4 years. I did not want to leave her, even for a short time, but the idea of adventure, the chance to gain more wealth, and the lessons I had learned at sea made my heart restless. I knew I could not ignore the call of the sea entirely, even after years of peace. I spoke to Isabella about the voyage. I tried to comfort her as I explained the plan. It will be only 8 weeks, I told her. I will return safely, and everything will continue as it is now. I promise. But her face was full of worry, and tears filled her eyes. She held my hands and begged me to stay. She was afraid of the dangers I might face, and I could see the fear in her heart. I wanted to tell her that everything would be fine, but I also knew that I could not guarantee it. The sea is unpredictable, and no one can know what may happen. The preparations for the voyage were exciting yet tense. I packed my belongings carefully, making sure to bring everything I might need. The ship was ready, the crew was eager, and the merchants were prepared for trade. As the day to leave approached, I felt both excitement and fear. I thought about the storm I had survived on my first voyage, about the dangers of the sea, and about Isabella waiting for me at home. I tried to focus on the promise I had made and the hope that I would return safely in 8 weeks. Even though Isabella cried and pleaded, I could not refuse this last opportunity. I loved her deeply, but I also felt that I needed to honor my own dreams and the life of adventure I had always wanted. I hugged her tightly and promised, I will return in 8 weeks. I swear it. Everything we have built will remain, and I will come back to you. She tried to believe me, and I hoped she did. I left our home with a heavy heart, knowing that leaving Isabella was the hardest part of my life so far. The morning of our departure was bright and clear. I kissed Isabella one last time, and watched her from the shore as the ship moved slowly into the water. I could see her tears, and I could hear her call my name. My heart ached, but I reminded myself of my promise. I had to be brave, both for her and for myself. The ship sailed away, leaving the familiar land behind. I felt the waves beneath me, the wind in my face, and the endless horizon ahead. For the first time in a long time, I felt the thrill of adventure once again. Those 8 weeks would become the most important period of my life up to that moment. I did not know it yet, but everything I had built, the plantation, the home, and my happiness with Isabella, was about to be tested in ways I could never imagine. I carried with me the memories of our life together, the lessons I had learned on my previous voyages, and the hope that I would return to Isabella as promised. The promise gave me strength, but the sea had its own plans, as I would soon discover. 4. The storm, the fateful storm. It was the first day of September 1659 when our ship left Brazil. I was full of hope and excitement, thinking about the profitable voyage ahead and the promise I had made to Isabella. The morning was bright, the sun shining over the ocean, and the wind was gentle. Everything seemed perfect. I watched as the crew prepared the ship, checking the ropes and sails. The air was filled with the smell of salt and the sound of seagulls flying overhead. My heart was full of expectation. I imagined returning to Brazil in 8 weeks, greeting Isabella with a smile, and continuing our life together. The first days of the journey were smooth. The sea was calm, and the ship sailed quickly across the Atlantic. I spent my time learning more about the ship, helping the crew, and keeping an eye on the horizon. Every evening, I looked at the stars to navigate, just as I had learned on my previous voyages. The nights were quiet, and I often thought about the life I had left behind in Brazil. Isabella's face appeared in my mind, and I promised myself again that I would return safely. But the sea is unpredictable, and adventure is never without danger. On the 12th day of our voyage, everything changed. The sky darkened, clouds covered the sun, and a strong wind began to blow. At first, it seemed like a normal storm, one that sailors face often. But soon, the wind grew stronger, and the waves began to rise. The ship rocked violently from side to side. The crew shouted orders, trying to control the sails and ropes. Water started to enter the ship, splashing across the deck. I felt a cold fear in my heart. This was not an ordinary storm. It was something terrible, something that could destroy us all. The waves became enormous, taller than I had ever seen. Lightning struck the sea around us, and thunder roared above. The wind howled like a wild animal, tearing at the sails and shaking the ship. I held on to a rope with all my strength, trying not to fall. I looked at the sailors around me, and I saw fear in their eyes. Everyone was working desperately, but the ship moved as if it had a life of its own. I prayed silently, asking God to protect us. My mind raced with thoughts of Isabella, of my plantation, and of all the life I had built. I could not imagine losing everything in a single night. Then, with a violent crash, the storm broke the ship apart. I was thrown into the cold, dark water. The waves tossed me like a small toy. I tried to hold my head above the water, but the sea was merciless. I felt the ship splinter around me, and I saw pieces of wood, barrels, and ropes floating everywhere. I held on to a piece of debris, struggling to keep my head above the waves. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes. It was impossible to tell. I was exhausted, but I refused to give up. I thought about Isabella and the promise I had made. I would survive if it was the will of God. All through the night, the storm raged. I could not see the sky or the stars. The waves continued to throw me in every direction. I lost count of the times I almost sank beneath the water. I felt alone in the world, with only the endless sea around me. I wondered if anyone else from the ship had survived. The thought of death came to me, but I refused to surrender. I clung to the wood, fighting against the waves and hoping that daylight would bring safety. When the first light of dawn appeared, I was still alive, though weak and cold. The storm had passed, but the sea was still rough. I looked around and saw nothing but water. The ship was gone, destroyed by the storm. I had survived, but I had nothing with me. No food, no tools, no sails. My heart sank as I realized the full cost of the disaster. Everything I had worked for, everything I had dreamed of on this voyage, was lost in a single night. After drifting in the water for many hours, I finally saw something in the distance. It was land, a small island, surrounded by waves but solid and real. With my last strength, I swam toward it. The water was still cold, and I felt my body shaking, but I could not stop. The hope of reaching the island gave me courage. Finally, I pulled myself onto the sand, exhausted, soaked, and shivering. I lay there for a long time, catching my breath, listening to the sound of the waves breaking on the shore. I was alive, but I was alone. The island was small, wild, and completely uninhabited. I looked around and saw trees, rocks, and the endless ocean beyond. I had no idea where I was or how long I would stay here. The thought of Isabella came to my mind immediately. I had promised to return in 8 weeks, but now I did not even know if I could survive the next day. My heart ached with longing for her. I wondered if she would ever see me again. I explored the island carefully. There were some palm trees, small animals, and fresh water from a stream. It was not much, but it was enough to keep me alive. I thought about the lessons I had learned on my previous voyages, how to find water, how to survive at sea, and how to remain calm in dangerous situations. These lessons were all I had now. The storm had taken everything from me, but I still had my knowledge, my courage, and my determination to live. That first night on the island, I built a small shelter from branches and leaves. I was cold, hungry, and exhausted, but I survived. I prayed for strength, for hope, and for the chance to see Isabella again. I realized that life had changed forever. My journey of adventure had taken a dark turn, and I was now completely alone on this unknown island. Yet, in the midst of fear and uncertainty, I felt a strange sense of determination. I would survive. I would endure. And somehow, I would find a way to return to the life I had lost. The storm had destroyed my ship, my possessions, and my dream of a safe and profitable voyage. But it had not destroyed me. I had survived the waves, the wind, and the darkness. I was alive, and that was the first and most important step. I looked at the island, the sky, and the endless sea, and I whispered to myself, I will endure, I will survive, and one day I will return. Little did I know then how long and difficult my journey would become. I was only at the beginning of a long adventure that would test every skill, every lesson, and every ounce of courage I had learned in my early voyages. The storm had taken everything, but it had also shown me the strength inside myself. And as I lay on the sand that first morning, exhausted but alive, I knew that I must find a way to survive, and that my life on this island would be the greatest challenge I had ever faced. 5. Survival begins. My fight to survive. The first few days were desperate. I had nothing to eat except what the island gave me. I found some small shells on the shore and tried to open them. The meat inside was raw, but it was all I could eat. I ate quickly, trying to fill my empty stomach. I also drank water from a small stream I discovered nearby. Each day I searched the island for more food, roots, fruits, and anything I could eat. Sometimes I was lucky, sometimes I went hungry. I learned that surviving on the island would require patience, courage, and constant effort. One morning, while walking along the beach, I saw something unusual. A large piece of wood was floating near the shore. I swam closer and realized it was part of my ship. The sight of it gave me hope. Perhaps some of the supplies had survived the storm. I searched the area carefully. Then I saw more pieces of the ship, barrels, ropes, sails, and other debris. My heart raced. Maybe I could find tools and food to help me survive. I decided to swim out to the wreckage, even though the waves were still strong. I held my breath and dived into the water. The currents were dangerous, and I almost lost my strength several times. But my desire to survive was stronger than my fear. I grabbed pieces of wood, ropes, and other items that floated nearby. I swam back to the island, exhausted but determined. Among the wreckage, I found many useful things. I discovered a musket, powder, and bullets. These would help me hunt for food and defend myself. I also found tools, including a hatchet and a knife, which were very important for building a shelter and cutting wood. I collected some pieces of cloth and sails from the ship, thinking I could use them for clothing or for a roof. Most importantly, I found a Bible. Its pages were wet, but they were not ruined. I took it with me. It gave me comfort, hope, and guidance in my darkest moments. I also found some food supplies: rice, sugar, salted meat, and wine. These would last for a while, but I knew I could not depend on them forever. They would help me in the first weeks, until I learned how to find food on the island by myself. Carrying everything back to shore was hard work. I was weak and still recovering from the storm, but I did not give up. Each step I took reminded me that I was alive and that I had a chance to survive. I began by looking for the best place to live. I needed somewhere safe from storms, high tides, and wild animals. After exploring the island carefully, I found a tall cliff near the shore. Behind the cliff was a small area protected from the wind. The cliff could act as a wall, and the high ground meant that no water would reach me if the sea rose. I decided this would be the location for my shelter. It was not perfect, but it was safe, and safety was my first priority. With the tools I had saved from the ship, an axe, a knife, and pieces of wood and sails, I began to build my first shelter. It took many days of hard work. I cut wood, carried it to the cliff, and arranged it to form walls. I used large leaves and pieces of sail to make a roof. I dug a small ditch around my shelter to keep rainwater from entering. Each day, I worked from sunrise to sunset. My hands were sore, my body was tired, but I felt a sense of accomplishment. At last, I had a place I could call home, a place where I could sleep safely, cook food, and begin to plan for the future. After the shelter was ready, I began to organize the supplies I had saved. I stored food in a safe place, keeping it dry and away from animals. I cleaned the musket and bullets, making sure they were ready to use. I sharpened my knife and hatchet. I prepared a small area to cook food over a fire. Each action reminded me that I could survive if I worked hard and stayed careful. During these first days, I also thought about long-term survival. I needed more than just shelter and food from the shipwreck. I had to learn how to live on the island for months or even years. I explored the island carefully, learning where the fresh water streams were, which plants were safe to eat, and where animals might be found. I started to plan how to hunt, fish, and grow my own food. The island was small, but it had everything I needed if I used my mind and strength. At night, I sat in my small shelter with the Bible. I read its words slowly, finding comfort and hope. I prayed for guidance, for courage, and for patience. I realized that survival was not just a physical struggle, but also a mental one. I had to stay strong, focused, and determined. Fear and despair could destroy me faster than hunger or the wild animals. I promised myself that I would not give up, no matter how hard life became. I also thought about the future. I imagined growing food on the island, building better tools, and maybe even making a small life here. I knew that returning to Brazil or Isabella would not be possible for a long time, but I wanted to survive until I could find a way back to the world I had lost. The first days had been the hardest, but they taught me valuable lessons: patience, observation, and the importance of using every resource wisely. By the end of the first week, I had made some progress. I had a shelter, food stored, and tools ready. I felt stronger and more confident. I was still alone, but I was learning how to live on the island. Every day I explored more, learned more about the land, and found small ways to improve my situation. The storm had taken everything from me, but it had also shown me the strength I had inside. I was alive, and that was the most important thing. From that moment, my life became a struggle to survive, but also a journey of learning. Each day brought new challenges. Finding food, protecting myself, and using the tools I had collected. Each day also brought hope. I knew that I could endure, that I could adapt, and that I could live. The storm had destroyed my past life, but it had not destroyed me. I had begun a new life, one that required courage, skill, and patience. I promised myself that I would survive, no matter what. 6. Building a life, creating my new life. After the first days of survival, I realized that living on the island required more than just staying alive. I had survived the storm and collected the most important tools and supplies from the wrecked ship, but now I had to build a life. I could no longer think only about the next meal or night. I had to plan for months, even years, of life alone on this island. Food was my next priority. I knew I could not rely forever on the supplies from the ship. I needed to plant crops and find animals I could domesticate. I found a small, fertile area near my shelter and began to plant rice. I had seen how rice grew on farms in Brazil, and I remembered the techniques I had learned. I dug small holes, planted the seeds, and watered them carefully. It was slow work, but I was patient. Every day I checked the plants, removed weeds, and waited for the first shoots to appear. While planting rice, I also noticed that some wild goats lived on the island. I decided to try to tame them. At first, it was difficult. The goats were afraid of me and ran away when I approached, but I was patient. I brought them food, stayed calm, and visited them every day. Over time, they began to trust me. Eventually, a few of them allowed me to touch them and even follow me. I realized that with care and persistence, I could keep the goats close to my shelter. They became my source of milk, meat, and leather. With milk from the goats, I began to try making simple food. I learned how to make bread using the rice and some flour I had saved from the ship. I made butter and cheese from the goat's milk. It was not easy at first. I had to experiment with fire, water, and the ingredients, but gradually I succeeded. These small successes gave me hope and showed me that I could survive and even live comfortably on the island. I felt proud of myself. I was no longer just surviving. I was creating a life. As I worked each day, I began to think about time. Living alone, it was easy to forget how many days had passed. To keep track, I carved a small cross on a tree every day. Each cross represented a day I had survived. Over time, I could look at the tree and count the days. This simple act gave me a sense of order, control, and accomplishment. Even though I was alone, I felt that my life had meaning and structure. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. My body changed. My hair and beard grew long, and I had to use goat hides for clothing. At first, it felt strange to wear animal skins, but I became accustomed to it. The clothes were practical and protected me from the sun, wind, and rain. Over time, I even made small sandals from leather to protect my feet while exploring the island. I adapted to the environment and learned to use everything the island gave me. I also began to make friends among the animals. A parrot had flown to my shelter one day, and I started feeding it. It became my companion, always perched nearby, sometimes repeating my words. A small dog had followed me from the shipwreck, and I trained it to help me watch for danger. The dog and parrot became part of my daily life, bringing comfort and companionship to my lonely days. Even in isolation, I learned that friendship and care could exist in many forms. I spent much of my time improving my shelter and making my life more comfortable. I dug a small area for planting more rice and vegetables. I built simple tools and containers from wood and stone. I made small fences to protect my crops and goats from wild animals. I experimented with making better fire pits for cooking and warmth. Each day was filled with work, but also with learning and discovery. The island became my home, and I learned to see it not as a prison, but as a place where I could create, survive, and even enjoy small pleasures. One of the most important lessons I learned was patience. Life on the island did not move quickly. Crops took time to grow. Animals needed time to trust me. Each day brought small victories and small challenges. I learned to celebrate the little successes, like a plant sprouting or a goat following me willingly. Each day was a gift, and I learned to appreciate it. I also spent time reflecting on my life and my faith. The Bible I had saved from the ship became a source of strength and guidance. I read it carefully, praying and meditating on its words. It reminded me that even in the most difficult circumstances, I could find hope, strength, and direction. It gave me comfort, helped me face loneliness, and encouraged me to continue building my life. Over time, I became more confident in my survival skills. I could fish, hunt, plant, and care for animals. I had a reliable shelter, food, and clothing. I could make tools and repair them when needed. I could light a fire in the rain and store water for the dry days. I had turned the island into a place where I could live for many years, even though I was completely alone. As the years passed, I became accustomed to my life. My beard grew long, my hair became tangled, and I wore goat skins every day. But I was not unhappy. I had learned to enjoy small pleasures. The sound of the waves, the flight of birds, the taste of fresh bread and cheese. I felt strong, capable, and connected to the island. It was a hard life, but it was a life I had built with my own hands, a life that I could survive and even thrive in. I often sat near my shelter, watching the sun rise and set, thinking about the world beyond the sea. I remembered Isabella, my family, and Brazil. Sometimes I felt sadness, but I also felt pride. I had survived storms, shipwrecks, and complete isolation. I had built a life from nothing. I had created a home, grown food, tamed animals, and made tools. I had learned patience, resilience, and hope. Looking back, I realized that those years on the island taught me more than any voyage, any storm, or any city in the world. I had learned to rely on myself, to think creatively, and to endure difficulties. I had learned the value of patience, courage, and hope. I had transformed a small, wild island into a home, a place where I could survive and even find a kind of happiness in isolation. This was my new life, living in a sturdy shelter near the cliff, planting rice, raising goats, making bread, butter, and cheese, marking the days on the tree, and living among my parrot and dog. I had survived, adapted, and created a life in a place where, at first, survival seemed impossible. I had turned despair into hope, loneliness into routine, and fear into strength. My life on the island had truly begun. 7. The footprint. The mysterious footprint. 15 years had passed since I first set foot on this island. 15 years of solitude, of building a life from nothing, of learning to live with the wind, the sea, and the wild. I had grown confident in my routines, my shelter, and the farm I had made. I thought I knew every corner of this island, every tree, every stream, and every hill. I believed I was completely alone, but that belief was shattered one morning. I had just returned from inspecting my rice fields, carrying a small bucket of water, when I noticed something strange in the sand. At first, I thought my eyes were deceiving me, but as I knelt and examined it closely, my heart skipped a beat. It was a human footprint, clear, deep, and unmistakable. Someone had been here, someone alive. Fear and disbelief overwhelmed me. I had not seen another human being in 15 years. My mind raced. Who could it be? A friend? A stranger? Someone kind or cruel? Could it be a man like me, lost and surviving? Or was it a savage? A danger waiting to strike? I felt both hope and terror at once. I spent the next days in constant watchfulness. I checked my shelter, hid my food, and observed the shore from a distance. Every sound in the forest, every movement of the birds, every ripple on the water made me tense. I realized that I could no longer move freely, that my home, the island I had thought safe, was now uncertain. Slowly, I began to search for more signs. Broken branches, small fires that had gone out, distant cries in the night, all suggested that the footprint was not a random visitor. Some people came to this island intentionally, and the more I discovered, the more chilling it became. These strangers were not always kind. Some were savages, known to capture prisoners, even to eat them. The thought sent shivers down my spine. My quiet island had become a place of hidden danger. I began preparing carefully. I moved my shelter farther from the shore, built a stronger wall of wood and stone, and created hidden storage places for food. I trained my dog to bark at any sign of intrusion and kept my musket loaded and ready. Every step had to be cautious. One mistake could be deadly. The footprint had changed my life overnight. I was no longer simply a man surviving. I was a man preparing for threats I could not yet see. I also learned to observe more closely. I watched the behavior of the animals, noting how my goats reacted to unfamiliar sounds, how the parrot squawked when danger seemed near. I studied the forest, the hills, and the shore with new attention. I even began leaving false tracks in the sand to confuse any observer. Survival now required vigilance, strategy, and patience. At the same time, I did not let fear dominate my life completely. I continued to plant my crops, care for my goats, bake bread, and mark each day on the tree. Life went on, but with a new awareness. I had learned that danger could appear where I least expected it, even in a place I had considered perfectly safe. The footprint had taught me humility and caution. Over the following weeks, I began to recognize patterns. The strangers came occasionally, visiting certain areas, leaving small traces of their presence. I learned to move only when it was safe, to hide when it was not, and to always be ready. My skills, honed over 15 years of isolation, were now paired with awareness and strategy. I had to anticipate danger and prepare for it, just as I had learned to anticipate storms and hunger. The footprint became a symbol for me. It reminded me that life is never entirely secure, that even the most isolated place can hold surprises. But it also reminded me of my strength. I had survived shipwrecks, storms, hunger, and solitude. Now, I could survive with knowledge, vigilance, and courage. The island remained my home, my teacher, and my challenge, but it had grown deeper, more complex, and more demanding. In time, I adjusted to this new reality. I built hidden watch points to observe the shore and forest, secret paths for my goats and water, and stronger shelters. I continued my daily routines, but with careful observation. Every sound, every movement, every trace in the sand was now meaningful. I had learned to read the island as never before, and so life continued. I planted, hunted, and cared for my animals. I watched, observed, and prepared. I lived fully, but always with the awareness that the unknown could appear at any moment. The footprint remained in my mind, a reminder of the mysteries of life and the importance of vigilance. I was never truly alone, and I had to respect the unseen, protect myself, and value every moment. 15 years of solitude had shaped me into a man of patience, skill, and courage. The mysterious footprint had reminded me that danger can appear even in the quietest places. It had also reminded me of my own strength. I had survived, adapted, and grown. I had learned to live wisely, to act carefully, and to remain alert. And with this lesson, the island continued to be my home, my teacher, and my challenge as I prepared for whatever might come next. 8. Friday, my first friend. One bright morning, as I walked along the shore, I saw something I could hardly believe. 9 small ships were approaching the island. Their sails were raised, and the flags showed that they were warships. My heart began to race. I had never seen so many ships in my life, let alone approaching my small island. I watched them carefully, trying to understand their intentions. Were they friend or foe? Were they merchants, explorers, or pirates? I had learned long ago that strangers could be dangerous. As the ships came closer, I saw men landing on the shore. They were armed and brought with them 2 prisoners, bound and clearly afraid. I stayed hidden at first, watching from a distance, my musket ready. I did not want to confront them without knowing their purpose. The prisoners were struggling, trying to escape, but their captors held them tightly. I could feel my heart pounding. I had survived alone for 15 years, but now there were others on the island, men with weapons, strangers who could be hostile. Suddenly, one of the prisoners broke free. He ran straight toward my shelter. I was astonished. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. He was fast and desperate, but he was alive, and he had chosen me as his hope of escape. I raised my musket, not knowing if I should shoot or not. My instincts told me to protect myself, but something inside me urged caution. I had faced danger before, and I knew the difference between fear and opportunity. When the prisoner reached the edge of the clearing near my shelter, the captors on the shore noticed him and shouted. They raised their weapons and began to chase him. I realized I had to act quickly. I fired my musket, not to harm, but to warn the captors and protect the man. The sound echoed across the island, and the captors hesitated. The prisoner collapsed near my feet, exhausted and terrified. I approached him slowly, showing that I meant no harm. He looked at me with wide eyes, trembling. I could see fear and confusion, but also relief. I spoke gently, using gestures and calm words. Over time, he began to understand that I was not his enemy. He was grateful, and I could see the trust forming between us. I knew that this man could become my ally. I realized that, after 15 years of solitude, I might finally have another human being with whom to share my life. I helped him to his feet, offering water and food I had prepared. He drank eagerly and ate with gratitude. He did not speak my language, but his eyes and gestures communicated everything I needed to know. He was loyal, grateful, and willing to trust me. Over the next few days, I taught him simple words and phrases, and I began to understand him better. He was intelligent, strong, and capable. I knew that with his help, life on the island could change in ways I had only imagined. I decided to name him Friday, because that was the day I found him and saved his life. He accepted the name with a nod and a smile. From that moment, our bond began. I taught him English, using simple words and gestures, and he taught me about his homeland, his people, and the dangers he had faced. We became companions, friends, and partners in survival. He learned quickly, and his skills proved invaluable. From that day, I called him Friday. With Friday by my side, I could finally expand my work on the island. We built a stronger shelter near the cliff, combining our efforts to make it safer and more comfortable. I showed him how to plant rice and vegetables, how to care for goats, and how to make simple tools. He helped me build fences, improve water collection, and cook meals. Together, we created a small but thriving farm, turning the island into a place of productivity and safety. Friday was loyal and brave. He learned quickly and adapted to life on the island with surprising skill. He helped me hunt wild animals and fish along the shore. He learned to care for the goats and parrot. He even helped me mark days on the tree, understanding the importance of keeping track of time. I realized that having a companion made life not only safer but also richer and more meaningful. We shared stories, laughed, and supported each other through work and danger. One of our first challenges together was ensuring the island remained safe from strangers like those who had captured Friday. We built hidden storage places for our food and supplies, strengthened our defenses, and established watch points along the shore. Friday learned to alert me to danger, and I taught him how to use the musket and tools to protect ourselves. We became a team, united by trust and the will to survive. With Friday's help, I was able to expand my farm. We planted more rice, vegetables, and fruit trees. We built additional shelters and created spaces for animals. We learned to make better tools from wood and stone, and we improved our cooking techniques. We even created a small garden near fresh water, which became the heart of our little island home. Life became organized and productive, and our daily routines gave us purpose and stability. Friday also brought new perspectives. He taught me about his homeland and customs, and I shared my experiences and knowledge. We learned from each other, growing stronger and wiser together. His presence brought hope and companionship that I had not felt in 15 years. I realized that human connection is as important as food, water, and shelter for survival. Friday became my brother, my student, and my friend. We celebrated small successes together. The first rice harvest was a joyous occasion. We built simple furniture, prepared meals, and enjoyed the fruits of our labor. Friday's laughter and energy brought life to the island. I felt proud of what we had accomplished together. The island, which had once been a place of isolation and fear, had become a home filled with activity, learning, and hope. Even in our work, we remained vigilant. We knew strangers could arrive at any time, and we practiced caution. We set watch points along the shore, hid our most valuable possessions, and reinforced our shelters. Friday learned quickly and became my trusted partner in these preparations. Together, we could face dangers that I could not have managed alone. Over time, Friday adapted completely to life on the island. He wore clothing made from goat hides, helped with every task, and became skilled in farming, hunting, and fishing. We learned to communicate fluently, using a combination of gestures and simple English words. Friday's intelligence and loyalty made him invaluable. I had never expected that life on this island could become so rich, productive, and joyful. Friday and I would sit together, sharing food, laughter, and stories. He became more than a companion. He was family, a human connection that filled a void I had felt for 15 years. The island, once a place of isolation, fear, and struggle, had transformed into a home filled with life, work, and companionship. As the months passed, our farm grew. The goats multiplied, the rice fields expanded, and our food supply became more secure. We discovered new plants and learned which fruits and roots were safe to eat. We improved our tools and cooking techniques. Life became more comfortable, though it remained a challenge. Every day required work, observation, and planning, but now I had Friday by my side, and together we could accomplish much more than I could alone. Friday also helped me reflect on my past. He reminded me of human connection, loyalty, and trust. I realized that I had spent 15 years alone, surviving, but not truly living. With Friday, I learned that survival is more than food, shelter, and safety. It is also about companionship, trust, and shared experiences. Our bond became the most important part of life on the island. Together, we explored the island further, finding new sources of water, better soil for planting, and areas suitable for hunting. We even created small storage huts for tools, food, and firewood, ensuring that we were prepared for storms or other emergencies. The island became a place of learning, growth, and security. Our teamwork transformed the island into a small, self-sufficient farm. We had rice, vegetables, fruit, goats, and even a small orchard. We could fish and hunt wild animals if needed. We had a safe shelter and hidden places for our supplies. We had routines, organization, and trust. Life, though isolated from the world, had become meaningful and productive. Friday's loyalty never wavered. He always stood by me, helped in every task, and shared the burden of survival. I trusted him completely, and he trusted me. Together, we created a life that was safe, productive, and full of companionship. The island, once a place of fear and isolation, had become our home, a place of growth, learning, and shared responsibility. Looking back, I realized that meeting Friday changed everything. He transformed my life from one of lonely survival into one of companionship, cooperation, and hope. Together, we learned, built, and thrived. The island was no longer a place of despair. It was a place of life, work, and friendship. My first human connection in 15 years had given me strength, courage, and a renewed sense of purpose. In this way, life on the island continued. Friday and I worked together, explored together, and protected each other. We created a small, self-sufficient farm, strengthened our shelters, and established routines for safety and productivity. The island, once a place of isolation and fear, had become a home full of work, learning, and companionship. We had survived, adapted, and thrived. And it all began with a single morning, a single footprint, and the courage to help a man in need. 9. The mutineers, the rebellion on the English ship. It had been 28 years since I had arrived on this island. 13 long years living with Friday, building our farm, raising animals, and surviving in isolation. I had grown accustomed to life here, to the routines of planting rice, caring for goats, fishing, and baking bread. Friday and I had learned to work together, to trust each other completely, and to face every danger as a team. Yet, even after all these years, the island continued to surprise me. One day, something extraordinary happened, something that would change our lives once again. It was early in the morning when I noticed a ship approaching the island. At first, I thought it was another friendly vessel, perhaps merchants or explorers. But then I noticed something strange. The ship flew no flag. That alone was unusual. Most ships proudly displayed their colors so that people could recognize their nationality and intentions. This ship's silence and lack of identification made me cautious. I raised the telescope and watched carefully. As the ship drew closer, I could see that it was an English vessel, a large ship with many sails and men aboard. But my heart sank when I noticed the crew's behavior. They were not moving as a disciplined crew would. Their movements were hurried, suspicious, and secretive. Something was wrong. I felt a mixture of curiosity and fear. After so many years of isolation, I had learned to read human behavior, and I sensed danger immediately. I turned to Friday and explained what I had seen. He understood quickly. We had worked together for so long that no words were needed. A simple look or gesture was enough. I knew that Friday would follow my lead and act with courage and intelligence. Together, we decided to watch the ship from a hidden point on the shore, waiting to see what the men intended. As we observed, the truth became clear. Some of the crew had mutinied. They were planning to abandon the captain on the island. They had no intention of returning him to England. Instead, they wanted to take the ship for themselves. I felt anger and outrage. I had survived many storms and dangers, but the idea of men plotting such cruelty on their captain stirred a strong desire to act. Friday and I began to plan. We could not confront the mutineers openly. They were armed, and we were only 2 men. But we had an advantage: the element of surprise. We knew the island, its hiding places, and its paths better than anyone. We decided to lie in ambush, waiting for the right moment to strike and rescue the captain. Our plan required patience, courage, and careful timing. The first challenge was to approach the ship without being seen. Friday and I moved quietly along the shore, using the trees and rocks for cover. The mutineers were busy preparing for their plan, unaware that we were watching. I could see them tying up the captain and preparing to leave him on the island. My heart pounded, but I knew we had to act carefully. A wrong move could cost our lives or the life of the captain. We waited for the moment when most of the mutineers were distracted. Friday and I crept closer, hiding behind rocks and bushes. I had my musket ready, and Friday carried a spear. We knew that surprise and precision were our greatest allies. When the mutineers were all in one place, I gave a quiet signal to Friday. We emerged from our hiding place suddenly, firing our muskets to frighten them. The mutineers were caught off guard. Some fell to the ground. Others shouted in panic. The element of surprise worked perfectly. I ran toward the captain, who was tied to a post near the ship. He looked up, startled, but I reassured him with calm words and gestures. Friday helped me untie him, and together we led him to a safer place on the shore. The captain was weak and frightened, but he understood quickly that we had come to save him. His gratitude was evident in his eyes, and I could see relief wash over his face. The mutineers, recovering from their initial shock, began to regroup. They were armed, and some attempted to attack us. Friday and I had to act quickly. We fired our muskets and shouted, using every tactic we had learned in years of survival. The mutineers were surprised and confused, unable to anticipate our movements. We used the terrain to our advantage, hiding behind rocks and trees, striking with precision, and retreating when necessary. After several hours of careful maneuvering and small skirmishes, we managed to overpower the mutineers who had not fled. Some of them surrendered when they realized that Friday and I were not ordinary opponents. Our determination, skill, and knowledge of the island gave us an advantage they could not match. Slowly but surely, we regained control of the situation. With the mutineers subdued, we turned our attention to the ship. The captain, now free, guided us. He had knowledge of the ship's layout, its sails, and the positions of the crew who remained loyal to the mutineers' plan. Friday and I followed his instructions carefully, moving quickly to secure the ship and prepare it for a return to order. Our experience on the island, our patience, observation, and survival skills proved invaluable in this task. The captain was grateful beyond words. He thanked me repeatedly, praising Friday's courage and loyalty as well. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. After so many years on the island, I had not only survived, but had also become a protector, a rescuer, and a partner in justice. Friday's bravery and intelligence had been crucial. Without him, we could not have succeeded. Together, we had turned a dangerous situation into a triumph. Once the ship was secure, the captain allowed Friday and me to explore it. We examined its sails, cannons, and storage areas. Friday was fascinated by the ship, learning quickly about its structure and purpose. I explained to him as best I could, showing him how sailors lived, how the sails worked, and how to navigate. Though we had lived for decades on the island, this was a new experience, one that combined our survival skills with the world of the sea. We spent several days on the ship, repairing damages and preparing it for departure. The mutineers had caused some destruction, but it was minor compared to the ship's overall condition. Friday and I worked tirelessly alongside the loyal crew, learning and assisting in every task. Our teamwork, honed over decades on the island, allowed us to adapt quickly and efficiently. The captain was impressed by our knowledge, strength, and courage. During this time, I reflected on the years spent on the island. 15 years of solitude had taught me patience, resourcefulness, and resilience. 13 additional years with Friday had taught me the value of companionship, trust, and teamwork. Now, faced with this new challenge, I realized that everything we had learned, the skills, the discipline, and the courage, was crucial. We had grown stronger together, and together we had overcome a threat that no ordinary sailors could have faced alone. The final confrontation with the mutineers came when we sailed the ship slightly away from the shore. A few stubborn mutineers attempted to regain control. Friday and I, armed with muskets and tools, along with the loyal crew, faced them decisively. The battle was tense but brief. Our careful planning and strategy ensured that the mutineers were defeated without unnecessary loss of life. Order was restored on the ship, and the captain regained full control. The captain offered to take Friday and me back to England, but we chose to remain on the island for a while. We had built a life here, and our farm animals and routines were too valuable to abandon immediately. Yet, the opportunity to return to civilization, to see the world beyond the island, filled us with hope and curiosity. We knew that one day we might leave, but for now, our home was still here. In the following days, we continued to repair the ship, fortify the island, and prepare for any future challenges. Friday learned quickly about navigation, sailing, and the duties of a sailor. I taught him everything I knew, and he proved to be an eager and intelligent student. Together, we combined our island skills with knowledge of the sea, making us prepared for any future adventure. The captain remained on the island for a short time, recovering from his ordeal. He shared stories of the mutiny, taught us about naval discipline, and praised our courage. Friday and I listened attentively, learning lessons that would be useful in the future. Our experience with the mutineers had shown us the importance of vigilance, courage, and cooperation. We had faced human treachery and had succeeded, not only surviving but thriving. By the time the ship was ready to sail again, I reflected on the journey. Life on the island had taught me patience, resilience, and ingenuity. Life with Friday had taught me trust, loyalty, and the value of companionship. Facing the mutineers had shown me the importance of courage, strategy, and decisive action. Together, these experiences had transformed me from a survivor into a capable, wise, and resourceful man. Friday and I looked at each other with understanding. We had faced countless challenges together, and this one had tested us in ways we had never imagined. Yet, we had succeeded. We had rescued the captain, defeated the mutineers, and regained control of the ship. Our bond was stronger than ever. We were not just survivors. We were partners, friends, and protectors. As the ship prepared to depart, I realized that life on this island would never be the same. The mutiny had reminded us that danger could appear unexpectedly, and that vigilance and skill were always necessary. Yet, it had also shown us that courage, loyalty, and cooperation could overcome even the most treacherous challenges. Friday and I had proven that together we could face anything. And so our life continued. The island remained our home, our farm our pride, and our skills our tools for survival. But now we had experienced the wider world, the dangers of human greed, and the importance of protecting what we had built. The mutineers had come, but they had failed. Friday and I had triumphed, and our island home remained safe and productive, a testament to courage, trust, and the bond between two men who had survived together. 10. Return home from the island to a new journey. It was December 19th, 1686. The sun rose slowly, casting golden light across the beach where I had spent 28 years of my life. The island looked peaceful, calm, and yet it had been both a prison and a kingdom for me. Today, I was to leave it, no longer alone, for Friday, and I would travel with the captain whose life we had saved from the mutineers. Friday walked beside me, the parrot perched on his shoulder, squawking as if sensing the excitement in the air. He had been my companion, my friend, and my brother in all these years of solitude. Together, we had survived storms, hunted for food, raised crops, tended animals, and faced dangers both human and wild. And now, the island that had shaped us, taught us, and tested us would fade behind us as we prepared for a voyage unlike any other. The captain and his crew had anchored their ship near the shore. They greeted us warmly, eager to take us back to England. I remembered how perilous our encounter with them had been months before, how we had hidden, ambushed the mutineers, and rescued their captain. Now, the same captain whom Friday and I had saved from the mutineers was returning the favor, offering us safe passage home. It was a strange and wonderful reversal of fortune. As we boarded the ship, I paused to take a final look at the island. Every tree, every cliff, every shelter, and every goat reminded me of the years I had lived here. I thought of the first days of fear and hunger, the lonely nights, the storms that threatened to destroy everything, and the discovery of Friday, the first human friend I had found in so many years. I whispered a silent farewell, promising myself I would return in spirit if not in body. The voyage to England was long and reflective. Friday and I spent hours recounting our memories, speaking of storms, mutineers, the farm we had built, and all the small victories that had kept us alive. He asked questions about England, about its people, and about the world beyond the ocean, and I did my best to explain. The sea was calm most days, and the skies were clear, but my heart was restless. England would be familiar yet foreign after so many years, and I longed for one more reunion beyond the shore, to see Isabella, my wife, in Brazil. When we finally arrived in England, the captain treated us with respect and kindness. I reunited with distant relatives and old friends, though much had changed. My parents had passed long ago, and the streets and towns were unfamiliar. Yet, amid the strangeness, I felt relief and safety. Friday, though fascinated by the bustling life around him, remained close to me, sharing in my awe and curiosity. England was a place of both comfort and preparation. I spent weeks arranging supplies, learning about ships, and planning a voyage across the Atlantic to Brazil. My heart ached to see Isabella again, to know whether she had survived, and to attempt to reclaim the life we had once dreamed of together. Friday remained my steadfast companion, eager to share in every step of the journey, his presence a source of courage and reassurance. Finally, the day came when we were ready to depart. The ship was loaded, the sails were set, and the wind favored us. I looked back one last time at England, a land of safety and memory, but my eyes turned toward the vast Atlantic, toward Brazil, and toward the hope of reunion. Friday stood at my side, the parrot squawking in excitement, and together we set our course for the unknown waters ahead. As we sailed away, I felt a mixture of hope, anxiety, and determination. The island was behind us. England lay in memory, and before us stretched the open sea. My journey was far from over, but I carried with me lessons of survival, courage, and loyalty. Most importantly, I carried Friday, a friend who had shared every danger and every triumph. Together, we faced the horizon, ready for whatever awaited us in Brazil, and the promise of reuniting with Isabella gave me strength beyond measure. And so, our adventure continued, not merely a voyage across the sea, but a journey of the heart toward home, love, and the life I had once left behind. The wind filled the sails, the waves rocked the ship, and I felt the thrill of destiny, knowing that every challenge we had faced had led us to this moment. The beginning of a new chapter, the journey from England to Brazil.
Thank you so much for watching this story. If you enjoyed it and learned something new, don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends. Maybe they need a little reminder to be brave and kind too. And if you love stories like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Every week, we share new English stories that are simple, beautiful, and full of life lessons. Stories that help you learn English naturally while touching your heart. Remember, learning English doesn't have to be hard. It can be peaceful, meaningful, and fun, one story at a time. So, see you in the next video, and until then, keep learning, keep smiling, and keep being kind.